Good evening. My name is Shira Schwartz, and I am one of the chairs for tonight's Family in Israel event, along with Bracha Aronson, Yafa Factor, and Ariella Weiss. It is a pleasure to welcome you this evening. We are so grateful to everyone who has joined us and to those who have generously donated to tonight's event. Emunah is one of the largest social service agencies in Israel. It provides sustenance, education, and counseling to vulnerable and at-risk children and families. Emunah helps more than 10,000 Israelis on a daily basis through its interventional daycares and nurseries, schools, counseling centers, and residential homes.
Every day, through interactions both large and small, Emunah helps improve the lives of those in need. So too, to our 4 honorees this evening, Jeffrey Brown, Lori and Jeff Fialkov, and Joanne Lang. Each in their own way, often quietly and unnoticed, has seen a need and taken initiative to help others. We look forward to telling you more about them later in our program. We begin tonight with greetings and a message from the President of the State of Israel, Isaac Herzog.
Dear friends, supporters, leaders, and affiliates from all across the globe of World Emunah, I'm so pleased to greet you today, both as the President of the State of Israel and, more importantly, as the loving grandson of the founding president of this distinguished organization, my beloved grandmother, Rabbanit Sarah Herzog. World Emunah, the International Organization of Religious Zionist Women, represents 3 fundamental values deeply rooted in my upbringing, which motivated me and my worldview from childhood: profound religious faith, devoted love of Israel, and unqualified admiration of the power of women. My grandmother, Alea Shalom, who encompassed these core principles, would have been beaming with pride in light of the extraordinary evolution facilitated by each and every one of you, thanks by no small measures to President Dina Han and Emunah Chair Liora Minka. Through World Emunah's remarkable services, each of you is a change maker. You've continuously supported vulnerable groups and individuals, cared for children and educated teens, empowered women, and built stronger communities. Your crucial operations are increasing resilience across the entire state of Israel and, by extension, throughout the Jewish people. Thank you for the lives you have changed and for all you continue to do. And may Emunah go from strength to strength. Be'atzlacha.
Thank you, President Herzog, for your powerful words. As the President said, Emunah plays an important role in creating positive, transformative, and critical change for Israel's most vulnerable citizens. We know a picture is worth 1,000 words. Let us take a moment to look at a day in the life of Emunah.
As you can see, Emunah is amazing. But Emunah does not remain static. We are constantly looking for ways to help our children. As our children grow up, so do their needs. And we do our best with your help to continue to be there for them. When our graduates graduate high school, like all teenagers, they still need us. And that is why the GradCo program was created. GradCo provides recent and future graduates of Emunah's children's homes with advice and guidance as they move on to the next stages of their lives. This might be their army service, Shirut Leumi, choosing a vocation or profession, and pursuing it. Without parental support, these young adults would face life's challenges alone. Emunah is there for them.
היה אלימות במשפחה, אלימות ככה מורכבת, הרבה כעסים. אני גדלתי בתחושה הרבה של אשמה, לא הרגשתי אהובה, בטוחה. ממש התניידתי מבית לבית, הרגשתי בתור ילדה. לא היה לי מקום יציב ובטוח ואחד. וזהו, והיה יום אחד בכיתה ד' והגעתי לבית ספר, היו לי סימנים על הגוף, וחברות שלי שאלו אותי מה זה, ואז אמרתי להם, הגעתי מאוחר, אז אבא שלי כאילו הכי טבעי. אבא שלי נכנס לכלא תוך שלב מאוד מאוד קצר מהידיעה הזאת. ואני נכנסתי למשפחה אומנת, ושם הייתי מאוד מאוד אלימה. כאילו ברמה שאני מרביצה לילדים, ואז הלכנו לאחוזת צרה. בסוף יש לי שם איזו ילדה כל כך פצועה ופגועה, שהיא לא גילתה עדיין מי, וכל האלימות וכל הביטחון שהיא מראה וכל הזה, זה בעצם מנגנונים כדי לשמור עליה, ולא ידעתי את זה. ובטיפולים גיליתי עולם שלי.
בסוף החוכמה, אני חושבת, זה לא באמת כל הזמן להציל אותה ולתת להם כסף. המטרה שלנו זה בסוף לתת להם חכה. אנחנו לא רוצים לתת להם את הדגים. אני חושבת לתת להם את האפשרות הזאת לצמוח ולהתפתח כמה שאפשר, כאילו באמת שהם הצליחו להמריא למעלה.
הכלים שקיבלתי מהפנימייה, קודם כל, ויסות רגשי לא היה לי בכלל. לא הייתי יודעת להתמודד עם מצבים שפתאום אתה שומע לא. קיבלתי גבולות, שהגבולות האלה כל כך חשובים גם לי היום בחיים, שאני יודעת לשים לעצמי את הגבול הזה של עד לפה. היה לנו סדנאות, כמעט בכל התחומים, בתחום הזוגי, שאנחנו נצאת עכשיו לעולם ואולי נכיר גבר ונהיה במערכת יחסים. היה לנו סדנאות פיננסיות, כלכלית, איך אני מסתדר. בעבודה שאני מאוד מאוד אוהבת. כאילו אני באמת קמה כל בוקר עם חיוך על הפנים ומרגישה בעשייה ועם משמעות, ושהכנסתי לי עוד ערך לחיים שהוא מאוד מאוד גדול.
מההצלחה הכי גדולה, אני חושבת שהיום מי שמסיים את הפנימייה יודע שיש לו כתובת, שיש לו בית, שיש לו למי לפנות.
באמת הרגשתי שאוהבים אותי גם.
חוויה של הרבה מהילדים שמגיעים לכאן, שהם שקופים, שלא רואים את הרצון ולא רואים את החלום שלהם. אמונה רואה אותם.
As you can see, Emunah helps our graduates transition into mainstream society. Once they turn 18, there is no longer government assistance for them in our homes, but they continue to need our support. Emunah continues to be there at every turn through the GradCo program. We teach our graduates basic life skills, everything from going to a bank and setting up a bank account, budgeting and financial responsibility, to finding the right mental health support. We offer group activities and, if necessary, emergency psychological counseling. And sometimes there are emergencies. For example, during the riots in Israel last year, the young women who were doing Shirut Leumi in Lod had to evacuate their homes in the middle of the night when their apartment was firebombed. Another young woman had to leave her home because of her mother's worsening drug and alcohol addiction, which made it impossible for her to continue living there. This is where the GradCo program kicks in, and Emunah, which means you and me, are there for them.
Like Emunah, our honorees are change makers. Change makers are tenacious about the greater good. They have a deep-rooted sense of empathy for others, identify a specific problem and do something about it. But it doesn't stop there. They are relentless. They work hard at making our world a better place. Tonight, we celebrate 4 remarkable Torontonians: Jeffrey Brown, Joanne Lang, and Jeff and Lori Fialkov. Jeffrey Brown has served in the lay leadership of Bet Avram Joseph of Toronto Synagogue, known as Bayit, for many years, and is currently the shul's president. A past Bayit vice president and treasurer, he led a team that designed and implemented one of the first synagogue security protocols in Toronto, and he serves on York Regional Police District 2 Community Liaison Committee. Jeffrey is a past treasurer of Hamilton Jewish Federation, and he sits on the Jewish Foundation of Greater Toronto Professional Advisors Committee, and he helped establish Canadian Friends of Yeshivat Hesder Lev HaTorah. He is also involved with the Shalom Hartman Institute of North America.
Growing up outside of Boston, everything I did had a Jewish touch to it, even though my family wasn't so religious. My hometown was 1/3 Jews, 1/3 Italians, and 1/3 Irish. We mostly got along and shared our religious experiences with one another. I was always involved, first with the United Synagogue, and then with B'nai B'rith. It was social and sports and stuff like that, always about having a good time, but I was always involved in helping out. I attended a small college in Western Massachusetts with maybe 10 Jewish students and fewer Jewish professors. It had a small, aging Jewish community built around a conservative synagogue. For 4 years, accounting classes started at 8 in the morning. So passing by the synagogue, I started attending shul some mornings so they could make a minyan, and wound up welcomed into the community. I remember driving Dr. Rosenthal around in his big Oldsmobile so he can make house calls at night without having to worry about driving in the dark. During law school, a retired Jewish judge, an Army general, asked me to serve as treasurer of a new charity that helped integrate the first wave of Russian immigrants into Boston. Roll forward to the Bayit. I first served as treasurer, and in 2014, Rabbi Karabkin asked me to put in security protocols as tensions around the Gaza conflict swelled here at home. Ours was the first true security program at an Orthodox synagogue in Toronto, and we shared it with other faith-based institutions. We organized a team of around 54 colleagues and called it the Safety Team. I got to know the bosses at York Regional Police, as well as the constables who patrolled Thornhill or responded to local calls for assistance. I learned a lot about how police operate, how they manage emergency situations, response times, protocols, and so forth. So, the Bayit was the first to do this, and a couple of years later, UJA assembled a more integrated, professionally run community security program. I actually taught our security protocols to the Muslim Council of Peel a couple of years ago. I even helped out the mosque that was recently attacked in Mississauga, where protocols worked and nobody was seriously injured. Bottom line, whether it's Jewish or not Jewish, I just seem to be not capable of standing by and minding my own business, thinking that other people are going to take care of it. I believe that it's up to each of us to take care of the things that have to be taken care of, whether it's within the Jewish community or the broader community, here in the diaspora that we are a part of, whether it's in my office or in family, in politics. I've always tried to help out, even without having to think too much about it. I am blessed to be able to help others. Annette and I see that sense of responsibility in our children. Our oldest son, Zachary, recently finished his service in the Israeli army and made Aliyah. He was the sharpshooter for his unit and fought at Tepuach Junction. Our youngest son, Benjamin, is finishing up Shana Aleph at Yeshiva Hesder Lev HaTorah. He will be returning for Shana Bet and quite possibly also volunteering for Army service.
בתור ילד קטן אני זוכר הרבה צעקות, אני לא זוכר מה היה שם, אני זוכר הרבה צעקות. בגיל 4-5 ההורים שלי התגרשו, אני זוכר את אבא שלי יוצא מהבית, אמא שלי בוכה, אני ואחי נאלצנו לעבור למשפחת אומנה. הרגש פחות פועל אצלך, כי אתה ילד, אתה לא מבין מה קורה. אומרים לך הכל בסדר, אבל עכשיו שאני מסתכל לאחור, שום דבר לא היה בסדר.
גדלתי בבית עם הרבה מחסור. השיחות שלנו היו ברמת ויכוח. ויכוח מהר מאוד מתלקח לריב, וריב מהר מאוד מתלקח למכות. הגיעה ניידת של משטרה הביתה בגלל הצעקות והריבים. אני לא אשכח את היום הזה שהתקשרו לאמא שלי והודיעו לה שאבא נפטר בכלא.
גדלתי בבית מרובת ילדים, שאמא לא יכלה לקלקל את כולם. אם זה לעבוד ולהרוויח שכר שהוא לא גבוה, ולפרנס 8 ילדים. הפיתוי בחוץ גדול, כשאין לך אז אתה מתדרדר. והדרך למטה קצרה מאוד, אם זה משטרה, אם זה חברים, אם זה פשיעה. תכלס הפנימיה הצילה אותי. זוכר את עצמי עומד בכניסה, מסתכל על האקווריום. אני עמוק בתוך המים שם, המחשבות רצות. אני זוכר את השיחה שלקחו אותנו, הסבירו לנו לאן אנחנו מגיעים בעצם. אתם מגיעים לבית טוב, בית חם בעצם, שיש בו חוגים, ואני התלהבתי. שמעתי חוגים, אמרתי, וואי, מה זה חוגים? היא הסבירה לי, יש פה חוג בריכה, יש פה חוג סוסים.
בפנימיה אתה מרגיש משפחה, כל אווירה של משפחה, כולם סוג א', מעטפת עצומה של הכל, כל דבר שהיית רוצה, היית מקבל בגדים, אוכל על רמה מאוד גבוהה, חדר כושר שהמנהל הביא לי, במיוחד כי הייתי ילד שמן. לא כל בית מרשה לעצמו מרכז למידה, שיעורים פרטיים, לא כל בית מרשה לעצמו חוגים. לא כל בית, אתה מגיע הביתה, יש 3 ארוחות חמות.
חדר ריקודים היה, חדר מחשבים.
הרבה לא האמינו שאני אצליח להתגייס ולהישאר, אפילו להתגייס. היה לי פטור מהצבא על המשקל. כיום אני מפקד על 22 חיילים. אני מוצא את עצמי אומר להם דברים שאמרו לי, שיאמינו בעצמם, וכל אחד מיוחד, ואין כזה דבר לא יכול, דבר כזה לא רוצה. יאללה, משוחררים, שערב טוב.
האינטרס היחיד שהיה להם זה באמת שאני יגדל, יפרח ויגיע למקום טוב.
רב תוריים מלסה הספר.
אני לוחם בגולני.
גולני שלי, גולני שלי.
אתה מסיים את המסלול, יש את הטקס, והמשפחה לא מגיעה. אבל מי שכן מגיע זה המשפחה השנייה, שזה הפנימיה. באים לחבק, לעודד, להרים לך. וואי, זה עושה שמח בלב.
הכלים שהפנימיה נתנה לי זה בעיקר להאמין בעצמי, להבין שאני יכולה להיות מה שאני רוצה להיות, ובאמת שהשמיים הם הגבול.
נחל, כאן חטיבת הנחל.
אני מקית טירונים, אני בעצם מפקדת על חיילים שמתגייסים ממש עכשיו. אנחנו לוקחות את הנשק שלנו, לוקחות את הידית דריכה, מכניסות אותה, כשהחלל כלפינו, ברגע שזה נכנס, נותנות לחיצה, מוודאות שהכל נכנס כמו שצריך. לשבת פה עם השרוך הירוק והקומטה הירוקה זה הגשמת חלום, ללא ספק. חד משמעית עשיתי את זה, אחרי הכשרה של 0.5 שנה והמון שטח, והיו המון קשיים בדרך. פתאום לפקד, ופתאום שהחיילים חוזרים אחריי, ופתאום הם עונים לי, כן המפקדת, כולם ביחד בצעקות.
כל אירוע שהייתי בו, אז לשמוע את המשפט הזה. אנחנו רוצים בסוף שתגיעו לנקודה שאתם הופכים להיות ממקבלים לנותנים. וזו תחושה הכי טובה. אתה בתחושה של ביטחון, עכשיו אני רוצה לתת לאחרים.
בתכלס לא עזבתי את הפנימיה. את הפנימיה לא עוזבים, כי בסופו של דבר כשאני יוצאת בסופה שעם הביתה מהצבא, אז אני הולכת לבית ירדנה, ושם אני נמצאת כל הזמן, כאילו זה הבית שלי.
מקום חם, מקום שפתחו אותו בשביל החיילים, כמו שזה נשמע, יש אווירה של בית. אתה מסיים שבוע קשה בצבא, אתה חוזר, יש לך מיטה, יש לך מצעים, יש לך אוכל במקרר, לא מובן מאליו בכלל. החלום שלי לבנות משפחה, ילדים, בית טוב.
החלום שלי, שיהיה לי חיים נורמטיביים. קודם כל להתחתן, להקים משפחה.
הבית שאני מדמיינת זה ממש בית עם גבולות ברורים, עם המון חום.
אני מאחל לכולם שהם יעשו תמיד וישאפו הכי גבוה שהם יכולים, וכולם יכולים.
Joanne Lang comes from a long-time Mizrahi Emunah family. Her mother, Lillian Lang, and grandmother, Rachel Besson, were active members of Emunah in Ottawa. Joanne has been working as a registered nurse in a hospital for the past 43 years. Throughout this time, she has consistently provided the highest level of compassionate care to everyone she comes into contact with. Through Echo and Hatzalah, Joanne utilizes her nursing expertise to help people in the community. There are so many families who have benefited from her devotion while in the hospital, and so many more to whom she has provided nurturing support in their homes. Joanne goes above and beyond in giving of herself to the well-being of others. In fact, in 2019, she literally gave a part of herself when she donated her kidney to a member of our community.
I have been a registered nurse at Toronto's Mount Sinai Hospital since 1977. For the first 12 years, I worked in the oncology department and then transferred to the emergency room, where I still work today. The emergency room is challenging and involves many aspects of care. I work in all areas of the ER, including charge nurse, team leader, triage, and the acute care resuscitation area. Dealing with people from all walks of life, we endeavor to provide the best of care and ensure that our clients are comfortable as we meet their needs. Throughout the years, I have developed an excellent relationship with Hatzalah of Toronto, our community-based emergency response team, and ECHO, a community organization that makes medical referrals. When people with acute medical needs require some out-of-hospital assistance, be it starting an in-home IV, doing wound care, and even giving advice on medical issues, my goal is to always provide whatever help or assistance I can give to families in need. Care does not only mean hands-on care, but helping with any number of issues, helping with a family when a member is going through end-of-life care at home, providing medical care to families from out of the country without medical insurance, or advising families of people with memory issues who need some additional support or care. Someone once asked me, why do I do what I do? I learned a lot from my mother and grandmother. My maternal grandmother, Rachel Besson, was the founding president of Emunah Canada. My mother and my aunts were very active in what was then Mizrahi Women of Canada. Gemilot Chasadim was in their nature. My mother was one of 7 sisters who were all involved in Emunah, and their homes were open for Hachnas Orchim and for Chesed at all times. While Ottawa was a small-town community, needs had to be met, and whatever had to be done was done with a full heart. That is how I was raised. Whether it was being involved with the struggle for Soviet Jewry, working with Tamir, an organization for people with developmental needs, much like Kayla's Center here in Toronto, or being active on the Chaver Kadisha, my mother was involved. Both my parents were very active in Bikur Cholim as well. It wasn't unusual for my mother to come home from shul with an out-of-town student or newly arrived immigrants who had no family supports in our community. Some of these former students often remind me today of the wonderful warm welcome they received from my mother. I had often thought of donating a kidney, especially after my mother and sister died. A few years ago, a family member said, "Maybe one day the mitzvah of donating a kidney will come true." One day, the opportunity presented itself and I went to renewal. I was fortunate to be able to donate to someone I knew, but once I made the decision to donate my kidney, had I not been a good match for this person, I would have traveled anywhere to donate. On the day of surgery, a nurse told me I was unusually calm. I told her that I was a registered nurse and knew what was entailed and was determined to go through with the donation. Thank God my kidney was a good match, and the person who received my kidney has been doing well. I made the donation for the great mitzvah, and I hope this kidney will be a bracha for continued good health for the recipient.
Jeff and Lori Fialkov are an amazing couple. Jeff is the head of plastic and reconstructive surgery at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center and an associate professor in the Department of Surgery and the Institute of Biomedical Engineering at the University of Toronto. His clinical focus encompasses the reconstruction of post-traumatic, congenital, and post-ablative craniofacial deformities. He is also an associate scientist at the Sunnybrook Research Institute. Jeff's medical outreach efforts have led to the establishment of an Israeli fellowship fund geared towards training surgeons in craniofacial trauma reconstruction, a much-needed skill set in Israel. In addition, he established a plastic and reconstructive surgery clinic in Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, in order to provide improved access to surgical care for remote Indigenous communities in Canada's far north. Lori has been a business development executive in the Canadian biotechnology and life sciences venture capital industries for over 15 years. She began her career as a research scientist after obtaining her PhD in biochemistry and molecular genetics from the University of Oxford. She now focuses her time and skills on multiple volunteer efforts in addition to managing Jeff's clinical and academic practices. She has been actively involved in establishing the Rankin Inlet Surgical Initiative and organizes the operations of a new professional medical association called the Ontario Association of Craniofacial Trauma Surgeons, which is a dedicated association for facial trauma in Ontario, through which they can ensure better patient access to craniofacial surgery across the province. Jeff and Lori are both active members of the Shar Shemaim community and have served on a number of committees and the Shul board.
Believe it or not, our work in Nunavut began at a Shabbos lunch. Our host daughter had done a summer internship in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and mentioned that it was very difficult for the Indigenous population to get specialist care in the remote north. Out of curiosity, I asked about plastic surgery. I'm a plastic surgeon. And she said, yeah, there are no plastic surgeons there. So patients have to fly thousands of miles to Winnipeg from the region that we go to, which is Fialkov, at great expense. It's a social burden since they have to leave for days on end, often leaving the family without the breadwinner or primary hunter or primary caregiver of the family. The only hospital in the entire territory is in Iqaluit, which is over 1,000 kilometers away from where we've established our clinic. The communities are extremely remote and not accessible by road. So that got me thinking. Our specialty is extremely transportable. We can do a plethora of surgical services with very little in the way of surgical facilities. We say in the business with a knife and fork, which really means a scalpel and a forceps. We do a lot of procedures under local anesthetic, for instance hand surgery, obviating the need for a formal operating room or hospital. So I started to explore the idea of what it would take to fly surgeons up there to the remote north so that a team of surgeons could accommodate, say, 100 patients, instead of flying 100 patients out for consultations and then flying them out again, making a follow-up trip for the surgery itself. And that's essentially how the idea began. At the time, I knew very little about what life was really like in the far north, and subsequently, I found out how much of a burden this medical travel truly is. Fialkov is the region we visit. It's an extremely impoverished population with seasonal unemployment rates as high as 50%. The people there depend heavily on hunting and fishing, and make most of the implements they use for day-to-day living by hand, including the clothes for the harsh climate in which they live. So they use their hands a lot. And so hand surgery is actually about 50% of what we do when we're up there. They're also very interdependent. For instance, there are usually 2 to 3 people in a household of 10 who are actually able to hunt or fish, living in a 2 to 3 room dwelling. And that might be their only subsistency for the entire household. So if those people have to leave, even for just 3 or 4 days, it's really a big deal. So after a few years of organizational effort and discussions with the territorial government, we now bring surgical services to them. And the beauty of the clinic is that we can see the patients and then operate on them immediately in the same visit. So within an hour or 2, the patients have been seen, their surgery's been done, and they are treated. We see them often for follow-up at the end of the week when we're there, and it's done.
Well, I've played more of a behind-the-scenes role, primarily in planning. One of the major pieces of this work is cultural sensitivity. You can imagine, given what the Indigenous community has been through, that there's not a high level of trust in external agents. So we spent a lot of time in the beginning figuring out how to approach the community without forcing ourselves in. We consulted with community members and really tried to listen to what they needed as opposed to what we thought they needed. They are very industrious, intelligent, resilient, and spiritual people who have a keen idea of what is lacking. There have been many ill-fated efforts in the past to approach Indigenous communities with a unilaterally established agenda, a kind of white knight syndrome. In fact, there was another initiative in the same region that we were working in, going on simultaneously, which was unsuccessful for this very reason. By working with the community, respecting their values and needs, and establishing trust, we were able to build on what they had and hopefully plant a seed that will ultimately lead to self-empowerment in this medical realm, a key Jewish principle.
And the community was really accepting. You can see that our clinics are growing, and we see about 100 people each visit. So that's a good sign that they're accepting the help and that trust is being built. And over the years, we've become friends with some of the community members, and we've been able to hear their struggles and bear witness to them more than we would have otherwise. And they truly are a community in distress. From water contamination to suicide, we know these individuals personally and have spent time with many who have lived in this reality. But it's a remarkable culture and a resilient culture, communal, stoic, and in spite of such hardships, the people maintain such a great sense of humor and are extremely respectful. And we're incredibly grateful to have been accepted into that community.
I am sure that, like me, you are blown away by the work that Jeffrey, Joanne, Jeff, and Lori do. They are an inspiration and role models for all of us. We salute them and wish them good health and blessings, and may they continue to go from strength to strength.
Finally, tonight we are also raising money for Emuna's first women's shelter. When women and children are living in abusive domestic circumstances, they need a safe place to go. Emuna now has a secure home for 32 women and children, surrounded by Emuna's services that provide schooling, social and emotional support, and the critical legal resources that are essential to their day-to-day lives and to put their lives back together. Tonight we have the honor of hearing from one truly extraordinary woman who is currently living in the Emuna Women's Shelter. To preserve her anonymity and to protect the safety of her and her children, we will call her Hannah and not reveal her true name or image.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to share my story. When I tell you my story, I'm sure most of you will say that I'm the last person who would expect this to happen to. I'm the person you would see at shul, who would host you for a Shabbat meal, or would invite you and your kids over for a play date. No one would ever imagine that I would be here. I come from a very privileged background, and yet my life was far from perfect. While I had the most beautiful childhood and upbringing, my story that I share with you today begins 10 years ago. I was married, and anyone who knew us from the outside thought we were the perfect family. We lived a life of luxury. We had beautiful kids. We had it all. But what people didn't see was the instability in our home, the unpredictable burst of anger, the throwing things, breaking things, threats to hurt my children. When my husband would throw things and shatter them, he would point at me and tell me that I will be next, the next to be smashed against the wall and break. These were the things that I dealt with on a daily basis. These moments were unpredictable. For 10 years, I lived a very difficult life, and I did everything that I could do to compensate for it. We were very popular and were also very involved in the community. We had guests often as a distraction. I tried to never spend a weekend with just our family, always trying to bring happiness and people into our lives. But when all these people left, what I was left with was my reality, and nobody to save me from it. Although my husband would sometimes, not often, admit and regret his anger outbursts, he refused to get the help necessary. The explosions and the anger got worse over the years. My husband would threaten that he would kidnap the kids, that I would wake up in the morning and they would be gone, that he would hurt me and that he would hurt my family, that he was going to kill me. The kids now were a bit older. I realized that I could no longer protect my kids' experience of the father's behavior, especially as the behavior was worsening by the day. I knew that I couldn't live like that anymore. I knew that I finally had to leave everything that I worked so hard to create for our family, to make perfect. I knew that I had to protect my children and that I had to protect myself. I left my beautiful apartment with my 3 young children and a few bags. I left everything else behind. And when we arrived at the shelter, I was very nervous of what I was going to see. But I immediately saw lots of grass, green, trees, places for the kids to run around. I was shocked by the beauty of the place. I didn't know how long I was going to be here, or even what the next day will bring, but I felt that for the time being, this was a good place for us. I knew that my kids were going to be happy and safe. I also quickly learned that the most amazing people that I will meet in my life are here. The staff were amazing and accepting and friendly and welcoming. People came towards us with open arms. They took us with everything they had, with warmth and with open hearts. And the women here are truly there for each other. There was immediately a feeling of giving and sharing and being part of the community that's there for us to grow and to go through a journey together. I'm so grateful for the women who share this journey with me. I'm presently resident in the Emunah shelter, and I'm speaking to you tonight because I'm so grateful for what Emunah gave me. This is the beginning of my giving back. I hope that I can help Emunah grow this program so that we can provide more help for mothers and their kids. Each mother here is coming with their own baggage and with their own challenges from different circumstances. And it's not easy for anyone. I'm also hoping for more organized classes and therapeutic programs for the kids, anything that could help them grow and experience this time in the best way possible. My family didn't have many choices when we left our home, and I feel incredibly fortunate that we made it here. Even though I have a very supportive family behind me, the threats from my ex-husband were also against them. And so coming here is really something that I'm very, very grateful for. The women's shelter continues to help me. I'm still here, and I'm going through a journey with other women, with amazing staff. And I think that from here I can only grow. I couldn't have done it without this place. On behalf of all the women and children at Emunah's shelter, I want to thank each and every one of you for your part in making a place like this possible. With your help, we have a safe place to live, professional support, and help to begin to build a new safe life. For that, I am forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, for sharing your story with us. My dear friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I hope you've enjoyed meeting our changemakers and experiencing all of the world-changing work that Emunah is doing. Tonight, you have helped Emunah Canada raise much-needed funds for the GradCo program and Emunah's Shelter for Women and Children. These programs would not exist without your donations, as government funds do not cover them. It's never too late to help. Know that anything that you can give or continue to give makes a difference. On behalf of the children and families of Emunah, we thank you all for your generosity and for joining us tonight. Good night.
שוב אני נלחם, שוב אני נלחם, מגנט מושך למטה, זה בנקודות הקטנות, במילות עידוד, הפעם אני לא לבד. איזה קרב אלוהים אדירים, איזה קרב בין הבור למים. לפחות יש פה קרב, לפחות יש מים, פעם היה רק בור. לילה כיום יאיר, לילה כיום יאיר, לילה כיום יאיר. אני מטיח את המים, זיכרונות צפים, מאיימים לשרוף הכל. יש מגירות שידיים